welcome to Thespis in the Green Room. Hey, Melanie, how are you today?
Hi, Bruce. I am well. How are you? How are you?
Good. Nice to chat with you. It seems like it's been a little while.
I know it has been. It's been a little
Yeah.
sporadic.
And the
I've
summer is upon us and almost over in a way.
It is. It is. Yes. I just finished summer term at school, so that's where
I
I've
know, I
been.
know that, I know, I know that's where you've been. Well, it is good to join with you. It feels right to be back talking on the interwebs and doing our podcast thing. And I'm so excited about today's episode because we finally get to speak with Max Quinlan, the
Yes.
new executive artistic director at the Greenville Theatre. We tried to talk with him a year ago, exactly about a
Yeah.
year ago, and the day that we had our interview scheduled, his baby girl was being born. So
Right.
we kind of, so we took a back seat. Can you imagine? And
Yes.
she is such a cutie, and now she's a year old. And
No.
Max has been in the Greenville theater scene for a year, and so we were finally thrilled to catch up with him and see how it's going and what's he doing, and a little bit about Max's background. He was a Broadway resident director, a Broadway performer, Jeff award-winning Chicago actor. He's done casting and acting, teaching, and all sorts of things. A director. I was fortunate enough to work with him on Elf. That was one of the productions that he directed this last season, Elf the musical, and so I got to work with him on that. It was a lot of fun and get to know him a little bit more there. But also last year for Greenville Theatre, he directed Mamma Mia, which they just closed out their season, and Producers, which opened the season. So he's jumped right in and with both feet and is doing his director thing with the theater. And this year is his first year that he's gotten to, choose the season and kind of develop how he wants to see things progress for the Greenville theater season. So that's kind of cool as well. I know too, I mean, you'll hear in the interview as we talk with him and so on, but he met his wife in Greenville while they were doing the Les Mis tour and that kind of thing. That's kind of a cool story. So he'll share some of that but some other highlights that he's had: Cabaret and She Loves Me, and those are directing highlights that he's done. Songs for the New World, Showboat Company. I mean, he's got just an impressive resume. Really, really cool, and it's neat to hear him kind of just talk about it in normal conversation. I'm kind of sitting there listening, with my mouth hanging open, but he's just kind of talking and just
Yeah.
sharing, and it's really kind of cool. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with our audience.
Yeah. It's a great conversation. So we should probably just get right to it.
Let's jump to it.
All right.
Hello, Max. Welcome to the Green Room.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yeah, it's a pleasure. We've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Like over a
Yes, we
year.
really have. Yes, it's true. It's true. This was
Uh,
supposed to take place, I think, the weekend that my daughter was born.
it
So it's
was,
almost
yeah.
been a year.
I know, that's quite amazing. We'll get to that probably in the interview because that was a really, kind of a neat. You don't mind being kind of sideways by a birth. You know what I mean? It's,
You
that's
really don't.
so,
You're
that's
happy
Really
to
kind of
be
a
don't.
special
interrupted
thing.
by
I
that.
Yeah,
was
that's right.
very, very excited.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, we'll jump in and get to some questions so we can get to know you and introduce you to our audience. And I know a lot of people in Greenville have already gotten to know you, but we'll hopefully get a little more depth of who Max Quinlan is.
Absolutely. I love it.
We'll get right down to when it all first started with you. When did you first get started in theater? And if you can kind of remember, if you can get back that far, what was your first show?
Yeah, I was so lucky because I was born into a theatrical family. So my mother actually went to school at the University of Indiana. She initially went for voice to be a voice major, and then she ended up coming out with a minor in voice. But she was a performer, and she and my dad, when they met, one of their first known interests was their love of theater.
Hmm.
And so that was some of their first dating experiences. And then when my sister and I came along, I'm the younger in the siblings, but we were a family that kind of performed together and grew up doing community theater in Buffalo Grove, Illinois. So my
Wow.
very first show, I was 4.5 years old as one of the snow children in Carousel.
Oh,
So that
wow.
was my very first musical, and it was kind of a tradition that every summer my family and I would all do the Buffalo Grove Community Theater musical together. And my father worked behind the scenes,
Hmm.
and my mother was in the shows on stage, and my sister and I also performed. And
Wow.
that just kind of led to more opportunities and growth in the community theater area in Illinois, which eventually just kind of kept going and snowballing from there. So I started really young,
Yeah.
um, and haven't known a life outside of the theater truly.
That's
So
wild.
I feel lucky to have lived in it and to be brought up in it.
That's excellent. Now, do
Um,
you really remember that show?
I have zero memory of it.
Okay.
Um, but I have been told I was adorable, so I
Okay.
believe that.
Well, of
Um,
course, we always believe the
that
compliments.
feels, yes, that feels like a given. But yeah, I do have early memories of doing shows. I think specifically the first show that I truly have a ton of memories from, I got to play Oliver
Mm,
in Oliver, and I have a ton of memories of that experience and putting that show together. And then after that show, actually with that same director, I got to do the musical Falsettos.
oh, wow.
And it was at Des Plaines Theater Guild in Illinois, Des Plaines, Illinois, which no longer exists anymore, unfortunately.
Wow.
But they had this beautiful theater space, and they did a show like Falsettos, which is incredible.
mm,
Yeah, one
And
spectrum to the other as far as types of
yeah,
shows there, yeah.
truly, truly.
Yeah.
And at the time, and this was someone who became very influential to me, but my director, Jack Lampert, was a wonderful guide, a wonderful friend, a wonderful mentor to me.
Mhm.
And he connected with my family, and he was going to do this production of Falsettos. And he actually asked my mom if she would be okay with me auditioning because I was 10 years old at the time.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And the show centers around a boy who's having his bar mitzvah. So he's 12 and turns 13.
Mhm.
And the material in the show is very mature. And
Sure.
so he had a conversation with my parents and with me. And he was like, "Are you open to this?" And my parents said, if Max wants to do it, then we'll support it." And I was like, "Yeah, this sounds fun." And that was actually the show that kind of changed my life. I think
Wow.
that was the first time that I realized just what theater could do and what it could be, and that it could tell these stories that were difficult and
Mhm.
messy and not perfect. And it was the first time that I played a role that didn't require me just to be cute and
mm,
just
Right.
to smile,
Right.
um, and required depth and
Mhm.
emotion. And it was such an eye-opening experience. And it was the first time I think I fell in love with the seriousness of what theater's impact could be like. And then
Mhm.
it also, I think, on the flip side, made me appreciate the joy of what theater could do with the bigger musicals and the Sound of Musics that are out there and the
Mhm.
Music Mans that are out there that
Sure.
I'd already been a part of. So it really, I think, was the show that kind of changed everything for me and made me go, "Oh, this is what I want to do. I want to tell stories that really
Mhm.
impact people."
Wow.
mhm.
That must have been fairly new then, for falsettos, correct? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it was new. It was I mean, I would venture to say we were one of the first community theaters to do it,
Yeah,
honestly.
Mhm.
okay.
So it was a very special production, and
Mhm.
everyone involved with it was so wonderful, and they were so great with me, and everybody treated me like a young adult, and I wasn't treated any differently, and the cast all got along really well. We hung out together. It was very close, and we were dealing with a lot of serious issues, and I
Yeah,
think that really bonds people and brings them together. And
absolutely.
and it was extremely influential and really made me want to keep learning about shows and materials and understanding just what stories could really do.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow, that's really neat 'cause that kind of leads me into my next question. When did you decide this was kind of the profession for you? It almost sounds like at a young age you kind of said, "Hey,
Yeah.
this is something I really like."
Yeah, it's true. I got really lucky because I got to do my first professional show. I was just 12 years old, and it was the musical Ragtime.
Mm,
Had just opened on Broadway, and they were having a sit-down production in Chicago, and they were looking for a new little boy when the show came. And it's so random because like all of it is so random. I There was an ad in my local newspaper for a professional theater company in the Chicagoland area that was having an open call for young performers because they were doing a production of The Wizard of Oz and they were thinking of using kids as the Munchkins.
oh, wow,
Mm,
okay.
And my mom was like, "Do you want to go to this?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, sounds like fun." And so we went to this big open audition. There were like hundreds of kids. We all had to sing and dance and do all these little things together. And then we performed, and It was this huge group setting, and then they were like, "Thank you all so much for coming in today. We just need to see Max Quinlan, and everybody else can go home. Thank you so much." And I was like, "Oh gosh, I did something wrong. I'm in trouble." But they were like, "Hey, we would love to hear you sing some more songs. Did you bring anything with you?" And I was like, "No, I didn't know that I had to." And and then I was like, "Well, I'm doing a production. I think it was I had just done a production of Oliver, and I was like, I could sing 'Where Is Love' a cappella." And they were like, "Yeah, we'd love to hear that." So I sang, and then they were like, did someone come with you? Do you have a guardian who's here?" And I was like, "Yeah, my mom is outside." And so they escorted me outside, and they talked to my mom, and they were like, "Hey, so this was a terrible idea. We're not going to use kids for this production, but we we really loved your son, and we'd love to keep him on file in case, we're looking for a kid for a show or anything comes along in our next season." My mom was like, "Yeah, sure, great." And that was it. And, didn't think anything of it. And
Right.
then that director was good friends and is good friends with Frank Galati, who's the director of Ragtime. And they were talking, and Frank was like, "We're having a really hard time finding a kid in Chicago for the little boy." And Dominic Massimi, another huge angel in my life, said, "We just saw this kid. His name is Max Quinlan, and we can't use him for any shows, but you should see him for Ragtime." And so I got a call from Canada, from Live Ent, the producing company, with an audition for Ragtime.
Wow.
And yeah, and so I got really lucky and went through the audition process, which was really long. And
I would think, yeah.
yeah, I ended up getting the part and got to make my professional debut in the musical Ragtime, which is insane because there are few shows that I think are better than Ragtime.
Mm.
I
It's
know,
up
that's an
there in like,
incredible show, yeah.
top 5 shows I think ever written. So just an incredible opportunity and so lucky. So that was really the first time that I truly, I think, understood being in that setting with other working professionals. I was like, "Oh, you can do this for a living.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I want to do this for a living. Like, this is all I want to do." So I was hooked. I mean, Ragtime changed my life in every way, and it became an unbelievably influential show to me. I met people who are still dear friends of mine and mentors of mine and father figures and mother figures and just like
Mm.
incredibly important humans to me. And I got to do the whole run in Chicago, which was almost a year.
Mm.
Um,
Wow.
and it was during when I was in 7th grade. So I got really, really fortunate and got to kind of dive into the deep end of the theater world at a really
Yeah,
young
that's
age.
amazing. That is
Yeah.
Mhm.
amazing.
So that kind of was the first time
Mm.
that I was like, "Oh yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be around these people, and I want to be doing this for the rest of my life if I can."
Wow, excellent. Well, along with Ragtime, you've got a great resume of other things. I mean, we know that you, as a director, because we know you with Greenville Theatre, but we know that
Mhm.
you're also an actor and singer and teacher and so on. And in Chicago, along with that experience, you won the Jeff Award for your performance in Light in the Piazza, which is another favorite of mine. I think it's just a
Yes,
gorgeous show. It doesn't get done enough. I just think it's
I
really a
agree.
wonderful.
I agree. It's so beautiful.
And then you were also an associate director for the world premiere of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Unmasked at Paper Mill Playhouse, and there's just so much more. We'd love to hear about all of it, but you only got so much time. What do you of those things? Obviously, Ragtime would be a highlight, but what do you consider to be a career highlight? One or two of the career highlights for you so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on a few of them. I think definitely making my Broadway debut as a performer was a dream come true. It's something that I grew up watching the Tonys. I grew up watching the theater world and just admiring it from a distance and dreaming and hoping to be a part of that community.
Mhm.
And, to be in a show on Broadway, to be part of an original cast of a revival and to be able to perform on the Tony Awards, and especially it was Les Miserables, so like it was a show that is iconic and
Mhm.
loved and so impactful and important, and so many people have such a relationship with that show.
Mhm.
And it's a significant piece to so many. So I think that was definitely a career highlight. I think performing as I got to play Che in the national tour of Evita, which
Mhm.
again was the revival production, and we closed the tour at the Kennedy Center.
Oh,
Mm.
Um,
nice.
And that was just an incredible thing, to walk out on that stage with that much history and this iconic space, doing this iconic Andrew Lloyd Webber show, playing an iconic role,
Yeah.
created by Mandy Patinkin, who was like one of my idols as a kid. It just felt surreal. So
Yeah.
I've had a lot of amazing career highlights, but I also think that one of my major career highlights was my professional directorial debut was a production of Ragtime.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
and it was a
A
very
full
full
circle
circle
experience. Yeah.
thing. Yeah, it was very full circle. And it was, the first time that I was truly at the helm of a piece. It was just my vision. It was just my ideas. I was inspired by the inspiration that surrounded me and the
Mhm.
responsibility of being a director. And I just fell in love with the art form in a whole new way and had this whole new perspective and love for it and admiration, and knew that that was truly what I was meant to do, and felt the most fulfilled as an artist as I had ever been.
Mm.
And it set me on a path that was really, I always knew that that's what I wanted to be, but having that experience of truly being the director and being at the helm of that show, it was the sign that I think I was waiting for to say, okay, I'm committing to being a full-time director and pursuing this as a profession. So
Wow.
I had awesome highlights as an actor,
Mhm.
and I have been the resident director for the Les Mis revival on Broadway, and got to be the resident director for the national tour of the Phantom of the Opera. These huge mega shows, and the
Mhm.
responsibility of overseeing them is a true honor. But I think, yeah, those are all part of some of the highlights I think that I've been lucky enough to experience so far.
Wow. Well, back to Ragtime, when you directed that, I'm
Yeah.
just really curious, on you being in the original production,
Yeah.
how do you re-envision something that was the original, you know what I mean? Other than the
Yeah.
original, how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? My favorite thing to do whenever I direct a piece or, visit a piece is I really like to visit it for the very first try and visit it for the very first time. I
But
try
you
and
were in it for a year.
I know, yeah. And what's amazing is like I was so close to it, but I was so close to it in such a specific way.
Mhm.
Playing a part, you look at the play through your character's eyes.
Mhm.
And sometimes you look at the play obviously through your scene partner's eyes and have a little bit of that perspective, but to come up with a vision for a show and looking at the themes of the piece and what do you want to bring out of different moments and what are the things that you want to tackle and how do you want the audience to feel and their comfort and making them feel uncomfortable and
Mhm.
making them think and provoking things, and I had a new appreciation for the piece all of a sudden. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm falling in love with this show in ways that I never knew I could, because I never thought about this moment. Like I never
Wow.
had to think about this moment in the
Right.
piece. So it was really incredible to revisit something that I knew so intimately and to
Mhm.
truly put my perspective on it and my mark on it and come to it with my thoughts and my vision. And I scaled the production down so much because the original production of Ragtime was lush and gorgeous and
Sure.
stunning. And I really wanted to get to the core of the piece, which is always kind of how I tackle any show that I direct, is what's the heart? What is the
Right.
heartbeat? What's the pulse of this show? If it could all get narrowed down to one idea, what's that idea? And for me, with Ragtime, it was the idea of music as a universal language.
Okay.
It's a show that's like all these different people with different economic backgrounds, different places in society, and the one thing that all of them had was music, and it's
Mm.
the language that we all speak. So the entire show, I only had a piano on stage the
Oh,
entire
wow.
time, and the piano became everything within the piece. It was the car. It was Evelyn Nesbit's swing. She sat on top of the piano. It was, I mean, you name it,
Wow.
that's what it became. And in the opening number, which I think the Ragtime opening number is probably one of the most iconic numbers in musical theater history, so it was very intimidating to approach it. But
Mhm.
I started the show that, like, those beautiful chords at the beginning. I had the little boy come out, which was such a different take than how I remember that experience, and he was giving a piano recital.
Wow.
And then the entire Caucasian community, the New Rochelle family, came out to watch his piano recital. And then
Tied
these
that
other
piano in right
families,
away, didn't it?
yeah, and then the other families came in and took the piano and played their music, and then somebody else came in and took the piano and played their music, and then I did this tug of war at the end between Coalhouse and Tatin. They were all having a tug of war match basically to win the piano, and then the New Rochelle family stopped the tug of war and came down, and father and grandfather made the little boy sit back down and start playing because they felt that they owned music. And so like the thing that I kept coming back to was the idea that no one owns music, right?
Mhm.
It is universal and we all have different music. So all of a sudden the piece came alive in a brand new way to me and hopefully to my cast, that we were always going back to that force. And it was a way that, as the little boy, I never even thought about the show with
No,
that
sure.
perspective. So that's always kind of my way of reapproaching something. It's how do I connect to this piece now and what
Mhm.
speaks to me about this show and what do I have to say with the person that I am in this moment, which I won't be that person the next time I revisit the show. When
Right,
I
right.
revisit Ragtime again, I don't know what will be the thing that connects with me the most. And I go, okay, that's the heartbeat. That's the central theme. I want to get there. So it's always exciting to me to kind of reapproach something that I've done before.
That's kinda neat because it just gives you this overarching theme that you can kind of pull everything out of, I guess, and,
Yeah,
that
exactly. Exactly.
that's neat. Very good. Well, tell us a little bit about some of your inspirations, people that inspired you. You mentioned some great directors that influenced you very early on, but I guess
Yeah.
throughout your career a little bit, some other folks that have been a big part of that.
Yeah, I think I have to start at the beginning with my parents. I was really lucky to be born into a family that loved the theater and supported the theater, and we were all very much a part of it. And that was an inspiration to me just to see my parents' love for it and appreciation for the art form. And I think they were as invested in me becoming a theater person as I was invested in myself becoming it. They were so excited for me to pursue that as a life. Which is also really rare because you hear so many stories where people are like, what's your backup? Yeah,
Right.
what's your backup plan? And my mom was like, you have to sing. Of course you're going to theater school. Like what other option is there?
Yeah,
So
that's
I have to
super
I
great.
have to start there. I had incredible community theater directors and friends that inspired me along the way. But also Trevor Nunn was a huge inspiration to me. I like connected with his work at a really young age. And again, the fact that I got to work on Les Mis in its reinvention years, and that was his show and
Mhm.
one of the shows that most inspired me when I was young. That I think also Hal Prince is a huge inspiration of mine. And so getting to work on Phantom was like a dream come true to just understand that. And working with Andrew Lloyd Webber was unbelievable because his music is the music I was raised on, truly,
Sure.
and so iconic.
You gotta tell us a little bit about what that was like,
Oh,
'cause he's
absolutely.
kind of a quirky guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. You know what? What's amazing about him, I would say, is that he's unbelievably committed to his art.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that just to say it. Like he
Mhm.
is protective over his work. He loves his work. Every decision that he made was really like thought about. He didn't just put notes on a page just to do, like there's a
Right.
meaning to everything. So working with him and hearing him talk about his songs and where they came from and what he was thinking and what he was trying to discover and find and how he wanted the audience to feel. I mean, I don't think there is a better composer who
Mm.
writes emotion like he does. I mean, you
Right.
know exactly how you're supposed to feel. If you take lyrics out
Mhm.
of his songs and you listen to Don't Cry for Me Argentina,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
an overwhelming piece and you know exactly how you're supposed to feel without words. And I don't
Mhm.
think every composer has that touch, but that's
No,
something that
no.
he does so extremely well. So yeah, I mean that was a huge inspiration of mine. And then obviously I was a Sondheim nut and still am.
Sure.
I think he is like the hero of heroes for theater and especially for actor singers. I just
Right.
don't think there's a better writer out there who understands how to write human complexity. And again, he's somebody who I think different than Andrew with the lyrics. Stephen tells you exactly what you need and all you need. It's all there. He is
Right.
so gifted and has given actors every gift possible when it comes to you examining his pieces and his music. So, I have such a admiration for him and a desire to do every single one of his shows because I just think that they're incredible pieces of art. And John Doyle, who's a director in New York and unbelievable director, he's most well known for the Sweeney Todd and Company revival that he did with the actor musicians.
Yeah.
And he also did the Color Purple revival that had just all the chairs that we've all
Right.
kind of like seen. So
Yeah.
he's a huge inspiration of mine as far as like just directors that I look up to. I think that he's kind of the tops in my opinion.
And you've had a
But
chance to work with him as well?
not personally. I've gotten to
No.
know him. I
Uh-huh.
actually, when I was in school at the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, that's when the out of town tryout of the Company revival was happening at Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park. And so I was at school when that show was going on, and I reached out to him because I was so obsessed with that production and what he had done with one of my favorite plays. And he was so kind and took the time to get to know me and talk to me about things. And it was incredible. So he's been a, a true inspiration.
That's excellent.
Mhm.
Well, that brings us to Greenville. How did you get to Greenville then after all that?
Yeah.
Because it sounds kind of fascinating and interesting, and Greenville's kind of far removed from all of that. So tell us a little
Yeah.
about that journey.
Yeah. So when I was about 25 years old, I got lucky to play Marius on the national tour of Les Miserables. It was my first tour and it was a huge opportunity for me. I still remember when my agent called me and it was like an 80s movie where I like jumped up in the air and did a freeze. I was just so ecstatic and like could not believe it. It was my dream show and dream role. And it was amazing because I got to tour the country and see all these different places. And I fell in love with Greenville, South Carolina.
We were a stop along the
You
way.
were a stop along the way. I got to
Yeah.
play the Peace Center, and I still remember to this day my very first walk down Main Street, and I was like, "Where am I? This is the most like adorable, quaint little downtown."
Right.
And I had never heard of Greenville before, and people were like, "Oh, you have to check out the falls," and seeing the falls for the first time, I was like, "Where am I? This is incredible. I love this place." And when I got off that tour, I when you're on one of those jobs, a lot of times people will ask you like, what were your favorite towns? What were your favorite cities? And so I would always, my top three, Greenville, South Carolina was in my top three every single
Wow.
time. So it had
Huh.
this like special place in my heart. And then I was lucky enough to come back through the Peace Center again with the Phantom of the Opera national tour. So I got to revisit the town. And
see how
then
much had changed.
oh my
Right?
gosh, and so much had
Yeah.
changed, yeah, and it had
Yeah.
only been about, like, 3 years between those visits, but it was a significant shift, and I was just like, "Wow, this is just such a growing area and so exciting, and I love it here," and then, lo and behold, my dream job of being an artistic director appeared at a theater in Greenville, and
Yeah.
my wife at the time, we were pregnant with our first child, our son, and she was on the national tour of Phantom with me, and she had just left for her maternity leave. And I saw this job opportunity come up, and I called her and I was like, "Hey, so you're not going to believe this, but there's a theater in Greenville, of all places, that is searching for a producing artistic director." And she was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I was like, "What do you think about me applying?" And she's like, "I mean, apply, sure, why not?" And I was like, "Okay, cool." We didn't really think of it otherwise. As
Right.
as an actor, your job is to audition. As a director and hopeful artistic director, your job is to put feelers out there and connect with as many theater companies as possible. So
Right.
I didn't really think much of it. I put my application together and sent it, and that was that. And then got a follow-up email and had my first phone interview right after my son was born, actually. And
So this was kind of a long process then, in a way.
yes, it was a very long process. It ended up taking almost 3 years, which is
Wow.
a crazy long amount of time. The pandemic
Yeah.
definitely had a lot to do with that as well,
Sure.
but it really feels and felt meant to be. Again, like I said, being an artistic director was kind of my dream job after performing and directing and being a resident director. It was kind of the job that encompasses everything that I had learned along the way
Right.
and gave the opportunity to be a leader and to create an environment and a space and connect with a community. I grew up in the Chicago area in Illinois in community theater and in a smaller area, and even as a performer, being on Broadway and doing national tours is incredible. But performing in a regional house was always something that I was really drawn to and loved. I loved that connection. I loved the intimacy of it. I loved that people knew one another when they came to the theater space. It was this collective energy that's not what you get in New York. You know, New York is
Right.
it definitely is New Yorkers, but it's also tourists, and it's a
Sure.
different kind of experience. So I always knew that I wanted to serve a community in that way and have that experience that was going to be found outside of New York City. But even
Right.
when it comes to being an artistic director, you know, you have to love the place that you are serving. I had seen job opportunities like that had come up before. I was like, well, I can't really picture myself there, or I don't think that's my town. And then so when I saw this one, I was like, oh, Greenville, like I love Greenville. Like
Right. Right.
that'd be perfect. So I kind of couldn't believe my luck.
Yeah, because most people kind of would look at this as a step back because you were so enveloped in the professional world of theater. Not that this isn't,
Mhm.
it's a different side of the professional world, but
Yeah.
so tell me what you think about that, or what when people say, "Well, this is kind of a step back for you, Max." What
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, it's so interesting because like it's one of the biggest steps forward I think I've ever taken in my life. And I think that it makes sense to me in a logistical way that people are like, "Oh my gosh, but you were on Broadway and like that's exciting." And I'm like, "It is. It is thrilling." And so is doing great theater everywhere else in the world.
Mhm.
And a place like Greenville, South Carolina deserves great theater, and this community deserves the best stories that can be told. And I have always felt that my duty as an artist was to serve a community. And I don't think that there's a greater way to do that than by being a leader in a community where the art scene is thriving and people
Mm.
really have a desire for it. And artists here are so excited and they want to learn and they want to grow. And when you're in the professional world, you don't always get that same type of excitement. You know, the pure joy and love of creating theater because you love it, not because it's your paycheck, not because
Right.
it's your day to day, but because you're taking the time out of your busy schedule, in addition to your busy schedule, to also do something that you're passionate about.
Mhm.
And I think being surrounded by those type of artists to me is so fulfilling, and I get so much inspiration from it, and have truly been so inspired by the artists that I have had the opportunity to meet in the upstate area because it's a thrill. So I think of it
Yeah.
as a huge step forward, and I'm so excited for the opportunity to take even more steps in this area.
I love that. I love hearing that. That's excellent.
Mm.
Well, we mentioned a little earlier that we were scheduled to talk last summer, which was
Yes.
interrupted by the wonderful birth of your daughter. So,
Yes.
and tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah. Well, now you're gonna make me cry. Yeah, my family is yeah, they're the best thing in my life. My daughter Sophie is about to turn 1, which is crazy.
I know, I know.
My son Jack is about to turn 4 in October. He was born on Halloween because he knew it was my favorite holiday. But they're incredible. They're just the best things. And my wife is an actress and singer
Yeah, tell
and
us a little bit more
incredible.
about Siri.
Yeah, so my wife is Siri Howard. She is just one of the best humans that ever came here. But she
You
we
gotta
met.
say that. You're getting recorded and
I mean,
stuff.
I'm being recorded, but even if I wasn't,
I know.
dang, she's the best. And we fell in love on the national tour of Les Mis. We got to play opposite each other.
So that was when you were performing then. Okay.
Yeah,
Got
we were both
okay.
performing, so we met then, and so we actually fell in love with Greenville together. We were on the tour together when we came here, and it was a really important stop actually because Siri had a big birthday that was in Greenville, so we celebrated a birthday here. And what's crazy is we celebrated another birthday here when we signed on our house,
Wow.
admitting we were moving here. So it was just like so many full circle things.
It
But
was a
yeah,
showmance that continued.
a showman's that continued, and thank goodness it did. And so she's still a performer and actively doing so many wonderful things. And
Yeah.
this coming year, she's going to be singing again with the Nashville Symphony Orchestra for their big holiday Christmas show.
Wonderful.
So she performs all across the country and is also one of the most incredible mothers ever.
She'd have
and
to be able to juggle all that. I mean,
yeah, we juggle it all. And you know what?
Gosh.
It's a really beautiful thing because we're so supportive of each other's careers and
Mhm.
we're really supportive of each other as people. And we know that this art form is not for everyone. And it's really hard. It is a very difficult thing to pursue as a life.
Right.
And we are in full support of one another's careers. And whenever Siri gets something, we're like, we're gonna make it work. We'll figure it out. And and I think the exact same. Like we have each other's back, and we support one another, and we make decisions as a family. And we know that being an artist is never going to be easy, but nothing in this world is easy. So
No.
we are truly a team, and our kids are now the stars of our team. So
Yeah.
they're our star players. And
Yeah, they'll get the most benefit out seeing you guys work as a team. So that's excellent.
yeah, exactly. And we're really proud of that. And I love that, like, my son Jack goes, "Are you going to work?" And I'm like, "Yeah, buddy, I have to go to work." And he's like, "You going to the theater?" Like, he knows theater. He knows it. And he's like, and he'll like,
Yeah.
we'll be going downtown. He'll be like, "Dad, are we going to your theater?" Like, it's so sweet. And
Yeah.
the fact that he gets to grow up in this community the way that I grew up in the theater community is so thrilling for me, and my wife as well. Like, that was one of the things that we bonded over when we first started dating, is that both of us were child actors. My wife made her Broadway debut actually the same year that I made my professional debut in 1998 in the Broadway revival of The Sound of Music.
Oh.
So
And who did she play?
Yeah, she was in the ensemble covered Liesel. So she was in like the adult ensemble and also played Liesel. So she
That's
did that for
excellent.
2 years and then went on the tour. So yeah, we've both been really lucky to get introduced to this world at a really young age and continue on with it, which is not everyone's story. So we're proud
Right.
of we're proud of the one that we have. Yeah.
That's excellent.
I want to jump in here and change gears a little bit. In the last few years, of course, you've made this move to Greenville and joining the Greenville Theatre, starting to lead there. I want to talk a little bit about the pandemic and your observations and your experience with the pandemic, because that happened just as you were trying to make this transition.
I know.
And what was your experience in the pandemic, and what do you think the arts did well, and what can we learn for the future, and what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic, it changed everything. And it changed so much for artists. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the amount of people that I know who left New York City, who left this career path, who found a new passion and a new thing to pursue. It changed a lot. It affected the theater community immensely, and we are still recovering from it. We just experienced the Tony Awards, and a prime example, we just experienced the Tonys. Company wins as the best revival, and a week later announces that it's closing.
Closing, yeah. I know.
And that's unheard of. It is unprecedented, because we are still living in unprecedented theatrical times, and we're very much still in recovery. So I think, the pandemic, a lot of people call it their pandemic shifts. You took a pandemic shift. And
Yeah.
I definitely took a pandemic shift. I mean, I had just opened the world premiere of Andrew Lloyd Webber's review Unmasked. Then I was in Florida with my wife, and I was directing her in a production of The Music Man, where she was playing Marion for me. And a week and a half into rehearsals, here comes this virus that is, we're just hearing about it and not knowing what it's going to mean yet. And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, we're closed down for about 4 weeks, but we'll be coming back. And that was the whole idea. And as that's happening, my wife and I are driving back to New York from Florida with our son in the car. And we're hearing all these crazy stories about New York, and it's shutting down, and it's really scary. Don't go there. And we're on our way in our minivan going, oh gosh, what have we done? What are we doing? What is this thing that we are driving into or towards or away from? And, all of a sudden we found ourselves at a place where we had never been. Both of us artists, both of us unemployed, both of us with zero prospects because we had zero industry. And it was a really contemplative time, an introspective time. I think a lot of people really found out, and it tested their artistry, it tested their humanity, it tested so much of, just things that were givens and things that we took for granted. Having a job and going to the theater is something that you take for granted. And it's something that I try and remind myself of as much as possible, especially being here, of just how lucky we are to be doing shows again.
Right.
So I think, it was a huge shift for us. And I was in the prospect of coming here to direct a
Mhm.
show, which was going to be part of my audition, quote unquote, process to be the person for this job. And all of a sudden I get a call saying that the show is canceled, and the other shows that I had lined up get calls that they're officially going to be canceled or postponed. And, my wife and I are staring at each other and staring at our child and going, what are we going to do? So it was very scary, but I got really lucky during the pandemic that I ended up getting, of all things, I got offered a position as a middle school teacher for a drama department for a school
Wow.
in
Wow.
Florida.
Wow.
So, and it was so random and came by recommendation. And all of a sudden, again, my wife and I stare at each other and we're like, okay, I mean, what else are we doing? And I was like, I have to support my family and figure this out. And so we packed up and moved to Florida temporarily, and I signed a year contract with a school. And we were like, we'll commit for 1 year and we'll see what's going on. And it was during that time was when I continued to connect with the Greenville Theater and was able to kind of continue my interview process virtually. So I was slated to come here to direct a show, but because that show wasn't able to take place, instead I offered to do a virtual masterclass with some of the actors in this area, and then the search committee and board could kind of watch the masterclass and see how I interact with the actors and get a little bit of perspective on me as an artist. And then I continued with the interview process and was so overjoyed when I was officially offered the position. And our pandemic shift all of a sudden was another whirlwind moment of us deciding to come here and deciding to set our roots down in Greenville, South Carolina, and begin a home and have an artistic home. And it was so much new. But I think the theater community in general, we went online as much as we could and we went digital as much as we could. And I think that was really important. I actually started up a whole web series of doing videos. At the beginning, when everybody was kind of putting videos out there, I was actually very against it. I was like, oh gosh, this is not what we should be doing. This is not theater. And the thing that was trickiest about it for me is I was like, again, what did the pandemic do? It made me think about the things I loved most about theater. And what I realized I loved most was process and collaboration and community. And all three of those things were not possible during the pandemic. And watching these videos come out, I was like, we're missing process. We're missing collaboration. We're missing community. We are trying to stay a community as much as we can, but we're missing those other two elements that are what make theater so special as an art form. And so the project that I did was actually called the Broadway Isolation Project. And the whole idea of it was that I took duets and trios and quartets that already existed in the musical theater world and worked with different artists, and the design of those songs is that they are people who are singing a duet but are in different locations.
Oh, wow.
So, those duets and trios and quartets are in musicals all the time, right? People who are experiencing the same type of emotional thing, but they're not in the same physical space.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this is what we're going through. Let's do that. And let's record it in separate physical spaces. And let's work on it in separate physical spaces, but collectively together and collaborate and have a process. And I can direct people and give them ideas, and we can talk and actually do the work. And it was fun to edit them and put the videos together, but it was more fun for me just to work with the artists again and to work on a song and to work on material and to work on character development. And that was the thing I was like, that's what I miss. That's what I love.
Mm.
That is my favorite part about being a theater artist specifically. And so I was trying to find that as much as I could in the digital world, but that's where I think we didn't really figure things out. I think that putting out videos was wonderful, celebrating artists and seeing incredible celebrities come together and do things was great. But what I wanted to see is I wanted to see like a rehearsal process. I
Mhm.
wanted to see just people working on material again, not just a performance. So that was something, and I think that we learned a lot from the digital world. I think that the success of the Hamilton movie on Disney Plus was very exciting. I think that it's something again that now, I think there's always conversations about what is that going to do? Is that going to veer people away from seeing live theater now that they
Mm.
can watch it in their own homes? Or is it going to, elevate that story and bring it to people who wouldn't be able to see it otherwise? I think you could see both sides of it, but I truly believe that it heightens live
Mhm.
theater because I think that movie provoked people to go, oh, I can't wait till it's back. I want to see it again. Or
Right.
I want to see it for the first time. And that's how I felt. I had already seen the show and seen the movie. I thought they did such a wonderful job with it. And I loved seeing what they did, but I was like, it's not the live show. It's
No.
not that live
Right.
experience. It's beautiful and wonderful. And so I'm so glad that it exists. But it's not seeing Hamilton live.
Right.
It never will be. So it doesn't replace anything. And I think coming back from this time and feeling audiences, especially come back to Greenville Theater and having these walls filled once again with laughter and tears and joy and happiness it's amazing because you realize that like that's what theater can do.
Mhm.
It connects us to our neighbors and our and strangers and loved ones and makes us all escape for a little while and go to a different place. And I don't think you can get that in any other medium.
No.
So I think that the pandemic taught us a lot. I think that we learned a lot. And I think the main thing that we learned is to be grateful and to not take what we do for granted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. I feel that. And that's a good segue into your first year at Greenville Theater. I want to hear more
Mhm.
about how that's been for you. And of course, being back in a live, active space with audiences in seats reacting to what's on stage. But not just the performances, the whole experience with Greenville Theater. What's it been like for you? How's it going?
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I mean, honestly, it's been so like I say this in the most beautiful way because I think the connotation of it could be negative perhaps, but it's been overwhelming. And
Mm,
I mean that in
In a good way,
all
right?
respects
Yeah.
of the word. Yeah, all respects of the word. And in bad ways, like in all ways. Like
mhm,
it's been I mean, the challenges of producing live theater this season have been immense.
mm,
What we're going through and continue to go through is constantly shifting. And there aren't rules. And there's not a guidebook. And we're figuring it out day by day and making decisions, important decisions that affect so many people. So it's been overwhelming and also overwhelming to feel audiences once again and overwhelming to meet a brand new community and to be taken in by it and overwhelming to meet all these incredibly talented artists in the upstate area and to be working with so many of them. It's been an overwhelming season. So I think I love that word because I think it's positive, it's negative, it's everything in between. And I think that's the best word to use to describe what this year has felt like. And I'm really just proud. I'm so proud that we're back. And I'm proud that we kept figuring out how to pivot and how to make tough choices and still invite people back into our space as safely as we could and to bring back theater to this community and to see this community have such a desire for it again. You can tell that the upstate has missed it, like
Yeah.
our numbers have been great. We're experiencing sold out crowds for Mamma Mia right now.
Right.
It's a
This is the last show tonight,
thrill.
right?
Yeah, the last show
Yeah.
is happening right now. I mean,
Wow.
it's thrilling. It's so thrilling to see and to like feel that and be a part of it. It's just been such an overwhelming honor.
Mm.
no. And what's been your take on the Greenville and upstate theater scene? Because there's a lot of theater going on around here.
There is. I mean, I'm so impressed by it, honestly. I think, and what's great is I think that there are so many thriving different companies, and everybody kind of has their own impact. I'm not a very competitive person. Like I don't that does not make sense to me, especially in theater. It's just like ego is my least favorite thing in the world. It's my biggest turnoff. And I think that there's so many different artists and different theater companies here that everybody has such a singular voice. And I kind of love that. I love that there are different spaces for different types of theater and different crowds. And oh, if you don't like something here, or that's the kind of theater you're looking for, like, oh, I know exactly where to send you. Or like, this is the kind of theater you're looking for. You're gonna love everything that we do at Greenville Theatre. Like it's really exciting that there are so many different places and so many outlets. And honestly, I had no idea that it was this big of a scene. And I had no idea that this many companies existed here. And it's so exciting to see, because that means that the desire and the need for it, you don't start a theater company unless there's a need.
Right.
So many times in my life, I thought about starting a theater company and I was like, where would I do it? Like what town needs my voice, needs theater? And the fact that there is a need for it here, and I get to be part of the people who is fulfilling that need, is really exciting and a thrill.
It is. And we're so thrilled that you're here and
Yeah.
participating in this. It's wonderful for
Yeah.
us. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
What can you tell us about the future of Greenville Theatre? Anything you can tell us about what's coming up, or any plans in the works that we should know about?
Yeah, we're about to go into season 97 at
Wow.
Greenville
Goodness
Theatre, which
gracious,
is
yeah.
it's just such an incredible legacy and amazing history. So I'm so honored to be a part of the history of this theater, and excited for what's happening now, and really excited for everything that we have ahead of us in the future. Our next season starts in September. We're doing, our whole season is called the season of new and renewal. And I was really, again, kind of like I said, when it comes to directing, I really like themes. So I like kind of having a theme for even the season, that it's like, oh, every show, I understand what it's doing there and what its place is within the bigger picture of the season. And so all the shows that we're doing this year, this coming year, are either brand new to our audiences or give you a sense of renewing your spirit and your faith in the world and your faith in being an artist. Something Rotten is this huge comedy that is so hysterical, but at the core of it, it's about artists. It's about
Right.
Shakespeare, and it's about writing, and it's about doing theater and your love for that and why you do it. That's the poignancy of that story. So like all of our shows are the sense of new and the sense of renewal. And so we're excited to keep finding new audience members and keep our loyal customers to continue to come back. So, I mean, I'm really excited about the expansion of our theater, especially because Greenville is such a popular area, and the area is expanding
It is.
at this crazy rate. And I want us to be expanding with that rate, and to be, when people move here, to be their new artistic home from wherever they're coming from, and be a part of these stories that I've been so lucky and fortunate enough to hear about people who found this theater at a young age and grew up in these walls and grew up seeing shows with their families, and now bring their kids or their grandkids, and keeping that tradition alive is going to be a true honor of mine.
Oh, we are so excited about what the future holds for Greenville Theatre. Oh, it's going to be a great season.
Yes.
Where can people get information about tickets, about season tickets, all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can visit our website, which is www.greenvilletheatre with an RE at the end, .org, or call our box office. We are always excited and happy to hear from our patrons and from the subscribers. And that gives you all the information about all the concerts we have coming up, as well as the shows that we have coming up, and a full list of our 97th season, as well as a full list of all of our concerts that are coming up in the coming years.
Excellent.
Awesome. We will look for that. Max,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for spending time with
Thank
us. this
you.
evening.
Yes, this was great. Long overdue, but really great.
I know. Listen, Those babies, I tell you.
Yeah. Are you sleeping? That's what I want to know. Do you sleep much? Because
I've heard of sleep, and I remember it. Is it currently happening? Not much, but
give it a couple years. You'll be all right.
yeah, exactly. That's what they tell me.
That's right.
So we'll keep holding our breath. But yes, we're exhausted and happily exhausted.
That's great. That's
Oh, that's
great.
wonderful.
Well, again, Max, we do thank you for your time. I just want to say thanks again for joining us. It was really great to catch up and hear a little bit about your life. I'm sure there's lots more in there, and I'm sure we'll
Yeah,
get to know more of you as the years go by. But thank you for spending some time with us today.
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All
Okay.
right. Talk
Thank
to you
you.
later. Bye bye.
Well, that was a fantastic chat with Max. I
It really
really
was.
enjoyed getting to know him. You've worked
I'm
with
telling
him,
you.
but that was
Yeah.
my first opportunity to really have a conversation with him.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it was super, and I got the chance to sit down with him maybe a week ago or so before we had the conversation, and that was just special too because we just kind of shared and got to know each other. So it
Mm,
was like talking to an old friend. Yeah, really cool.
yeah, which is different than the rehearsal room experience you must have had because
Yeah,
that's
it is. I mean, well, not only that, but we're still in the throngs of COVID to a certain degree.
right.
So, you're all masked and all that kind of thing, and you're staying away from people, and understandably. So this was a chance now that some of that is relaxed to just kind of get back to normal and have normal conversations and go have
Right.
a glass of wine and not have to sit 6 feet apart. So,
Right. Exactly.
yeah.
Well, he mentioned some of the shows coming up in Greenville Theater season, but I wanted to run through. They have an amazing season
Mm,
coming up.
hmm.
So I strongly encourage season tickets. If you're not a season ticket holder, that's a great option. A lot of these shows come with a season ticket, but there's also some of their fantastic concerts are sprinkled into this lineup. So I'll just run
Yeah.
through it. Coming up in August 19th through 21st, Elton John tribute. So if you're into the music of Elton John,
And who
that's a
isn't?
must. That's a
Yeah.
must. So many great hits. And then their shows kick off in September with Something Rotten, which is hilarious. I
Yeah.
love
Fun
that
show.
show.
Hmm.
That is September 9 through 25. And then they do The Play That Goes Wrong, which, if you're a Peace Center person, you might have seen that when it came through town. Funny, slapstick, farcical
Hmm.
craziness on
I think
stage.
this is kind of the regional premiere too for that.
Oh, is it? Could be. Could
Well,
be.
or if not, it's I mean, it's
It's
definitely
new.
new to the upstate.
Hmm.
So, so that's excellent.
For sure. That's October 21st through November 13th. And then they have their Broadway Holiday Spectacular, December 8th through 18th. That should be a fantastic concert of Broadway
Hmm.
hits, I'm sure. Then they're coming back in the new year in February 10th through 12th, the Elvis Presley tribute. So if you're into Elvis, there you go.
Yeah.
Maybe if you've seen that new movie recently, maybe that'll.
Which I hear wonderful things about.
I
I haven't
hear
seen it
wonderful
yet. But
things.
yeah.
I need to see
Hmm.
it. I haven't seen it. Need to see it.
Hmm.
Okay, and then March 2nd through 19th is Big River.
Yeah, that's an older musical that won some wonderful Tonys and so on, and is very rarely done. I've never seen a live production of it, so
Right.
I'm excited. I'm going to be in it too, so
That's
I'm
right.
kind of
You're in
excited
it.
about being a part of that production. Yeah.
And that's the story of Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I've never seen it. I've heard some of the music and I love it. So I'm really excited about that one. And then coming in March, later in March, the Andrew Lloyd Webber 75th birthday celebration concert, March 24 through 26. That'll be great because Max has a history with Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm sure that'll be amazing.
Yeah.
And the play Souvenir is coming up April 6th through 16th. And that is about the singer, we air quote singers,
Yes.
air quote singer, Florence Foster Jenkins, who was a real person, who was a very
Yeah.
wealthy woman who booked out Carnegie Hall. There was a movie
Yeah.
about the story that starred Meryl Streep.
Meryl
That
Streep, and it was
out.
wonderful. It was a
Yeah, it was
great
great.
movie
It's
too.
great.
Hmm.
So that has come up, the play version of that. And then Shrek the Musical closes out their season June 2nd through 25th.
They have these are all biggies,
They're huge shows.
bigger shows, with the exception of Souvenir, which is a more intimate show. The other ones, man, they're gonna be working hard to fill that stage. Yeah, pretty incredible.
Exactly. It's going to be great. if you're interested in any of those shows, or if you want to buy season tickets, you can contact the Greenville Theatre box office at 864-233-6238. That's 864-233-6238. Or, of course, you can go to the website at greenvilletheatre.org.
Yeah, excellent.
So, yeah, good stuff coming up.
Absolutely. Well, that was fun, Melanie, and also, as usual, just fun to get together with you and chat and
Yes,
catch
indeed.
up. Yeah, so until the next time.
Alrighty, see ya.
All right, we'll see ya.
Bye-bye.
Thespis in the Green Room is a Courageous Crossings production.